I'm just thinking about how my spiritual journey began. It's been a long, long journey. It's had its ups and downs. My spiritual journey started very, very young. When I questioned why there was so many injustices and there were poor people and things weren't fair, and then I'd go to Sunday school and I was told, we love everybody and Jesus loves everybody. And then I saw the contrast in the world, and it made me start thinking even back then, and I'd say it's probably about 4 or 5. And then I started school, and I remember there was a little girl in my classroom who had cerebral palsy and a brace on her leg. I took to liking her. I pretty much spoiled her. Waited on her. I started to become an enabler way back then. But anyway, she was adorable, and she had surgery. So she was really messed up there for a while. She had like a brace on her leg and something on her arm, and I'd follow her around at lunch and wait on her hand and foot till the teacher pulled me aside. And I'm telling you, I'm really young, maybe 2nd grade or something. And she says, "Cindy, you cannot do that. Her parents want her to stand on her own 2 feet, and you can't baby her because she's getting really spoiled." So that's where part of my journey began. I always, thought about the underdog. I'm not saying that I'm such a good person. I mean, I'm just as flawed as everybody else, but I did recognize things that weren't fair, or someone that was poor. I would take a liking to them. And then I lived on a street where there were mainly people that were Catholic, and my parents would send us to Sunday school, and they would split a 6-pack of beer and work on their roses. My folks were awesome people, but they wanted us to have a little bit of religion, but they kind of didn't really want to do it themselves. They'd rather be home with their garden and their 6-pack of beer and their roses. So that's how that went. So we went with some older kids in the neighborhood. But then my folks never had us baptized. And so these kids are saying, "I don't care how good you are, Cindy, you're going to be in purgatory because you're probably going to go to hell. But if you really are good, then you might make it into purgatory," which was like kind of like a holding tank or something. And I was like, "Wow, Mom, I need to get baptized." She goes, "No, you don't. I baptized you in the bathtub." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. If you did, I guess that's okay." But the kids kind of gave me a way to go about it on our street, because I'm telling you, it was Catholics and teachers. My mom was a stay-at-home mother, and my dad worked the shipyard. And we had a pretty amazing life. And at that point in my life, it was just, praying that everybody would be safe and well and whatnot. And my praying when I was younger was like begging. Like I would beg, "I'll be good if this will happen or that will happen." And I just felt so, so sorry for people that were poor. When I lived in North Long Beach and also Compton, there were people that were suffering. Now, as far as I was concerned, I had it made in the shade. My dad worked 6 and 7 days a week. We went on vacation. He worked at a shipyard, and anything that I really needed or wanted, I got. And my mom told me when we were grown up that, "Cindy, we weren't rich at all." But as far as I was concerned, we were, because no matter what, I know my parents loved us very much and really valued us. So that was kind of a comfort and coziness. So sticking to the whole spirituality thing, when I'd have to go to the dentist, and my folks wanted us to go, so we went like every 6 months, we had cavities. And I know they probably used Novocaine, but this dentist was like horrible and mean and callous. So when I had to go for these dentist appointments, I prayed and prayed and prayed that it wouldn't hurt very much, but it always did, and I was a pretty tough cookie. And then my sister's quite a bit younger than me, and she went to the dentist, and my mom heard the dentist go, "Open your mouth bigger, you little kid," or something kind of rough. My mom came in, and my mom jerked her out of the chair and said, "Come on, you don't ever have to go back to that place again." So I don't think I was full of baloney, because back then, dentists were pretty scary things. It's gotten a lot more mellow now. And so that's another memory that I have. And that's when I also used to pray and beg and pray. Yes. Then things went along quite swimmingly. Then when I was in the 7th grade, my cousin, Jimmy, very close to this cousin, he stayed at our house. We went camping together. He was a surfer, body surfer. My dad, who was great with woodwork, made the kids in the family surfboards and skimboards and things like that. Well, he got drafted. And I remember when he found out he got drafted, he was pacing this braided rug in my aunt's living room. And he's like, "I don't want to get my ass shot off. I don't want to go. I don't want to get my ass shot off." Well, to make a long story short, he did go to Vietnam and he did get killed. And it totally changed the way I felt about the world. And I saw this dark cloud over our heads. And then I didn't think that there was a God. Because how would God let war go on and people die and get killed? And I was pretty messed up then. I was just like, this is not a God that I would know. And I saw like my aunt get really old looking and my mom get really old looking. It was a tragedy. And I would pray for peace, pray for those POWs, and wore a bracelet on my arm with one of the POWs' names and numbers, and got really involved in like the peace movement. And I remember my dad, when he told us that Jimmy died. God, it was strange, because my dad was very optimistic and he didn't cry. So when he told us that Jimmy was killed, he turned all the lights off, all of them, and he told us, and I could hear him crying. I found out later that when my uncle called my dad and said, "Jimmy was killed in Vietnam. Jimmy's been killed, and Aunt Barbara's losing her mind." My dad thought they said Cindy was killed, meaning me, his daughter, and he took off running out of the shipyard. And then someone caught up with him and said, "Not Cindy, Jimmy." And then my dad said he was just so full of relief and guilt at the same time that it just was horrible. But that really did change the way I felt about, all of the stuff that I was taught in Sunday school. Then, as I got older, I started wanting to read different philosophies. And I was not a reader. Matter of fact, I have learning disabilities. They didn't diagnose those kinds of things, but I was a terrible reader, which in our family, I have a son that has dyslexia, so I probably had it, and ADHD and all of those kinds of things. I did fit in, but I also felt different. I had to try harder and things like that. School, I did okay, but these days I probably would have had an adapted program. And I knew I was different. I knew that I didn't learn quickly, and I pretty much thought I was pretty stupid. But I was interested in poetry, and I was interested in philosophies. Some of the old poets and writers who they started making reference to nature as their spiritual center. that resonated with me because I always was a kid that played outside. Folks took us to the ocean all the time, swimming in the ocean, looking at beautiful flowers and plants and vegetables, going to the mountains and fishing and hiking. Yes, nature spoke to me, and something great created all of that. And that completely amazed me. I was like in awe. And my dad, when we would be out camping and kind of out in the sticks, he'd look over at my mom and say, I sure have a lot of love in my heart for my family. And I know for him, that was a tender and spiritual moment, even though he didn't talk religion. My parents both were people, from the Depression. So they were grateful for every friggin' little thing that accomplishment or anything that they received. So gratitude was definitely in our family. But we only prayed when relatives were over and on holidays. I think that's kind of funny. And so that's kind of how the spirituality took off, really, honestly, through poetry. And then I started reading like the Bible and then memorizing Christ's words because they were more interesting to me. And that kind of was interesting. And I like the fact that he was a Jew because I'm like, okay, cool. He's a Jew and there's a Christian. So those are two cool religions. Because my mom would always tell me that God don't make junk. And I really believed it even then, when we sing those little songs about red and yellow, black and white, and that kind of thing. It always made me really happy. But nevertheless, I was thinking, this God that creates all that is, nature and everything, how come this God can let this stuff go on? Like, why can't this God intervene? So I still, again, had problems with that. And then coming out of high school, I didn't let it go because spirituality has just been a part of me. And I'll backtrack too. After Jimmy passed away, he came to visit us like as a ghost. And when I would play the piano, I'd see this figure come around the corner. And when I wanted to look at it straight on, it would dash. And that was kind of, I'm losing it. So I saw this for quite some time. And then I told my mom. My mom's really open-minded, pretty grounded, but open-minded. And she said, let me see if I see it. So one time there were a few people over and she saw it. She goes, I saw it, Cindy. So my sister was quite a bit younger than me, like by 7 years. So she was like 7. So my mom says, don't tell her anything about it and let's see if she sees it. And then she did. And we loved it. She goes, Mom, who's that? And we're like, okay, we're not full of baloney on this one. So that was pretty cool. So that was one of the spiritual experiences I had. And I also, through the years, have had some pretty cool spiritual things that happened to me. I always felt like people were judging me, like when I would say, like, if I saw a ghost or if somebody died and talked to me or things like that, I was very embarrassed. So I suppressed a lot of this stuff for many, 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 many years because I didn't want people to think that I was crazy. Also, I have to tell you, I was suffering from a low self-esteem, and I know that stems from these learning disabilities and knowing I'm different, not thinking I'm that sharp, and finding out only now that, yeah, I just am different, and that's okay. So and I'll get into more about these spiritual experiences that have happened to me, but we'll keep it easy breezy on this first video. So again, I suppressed these strange, supernatural kinds of cool things until I got up older. And then people would die, and like my grandmother came and talked to me. And that was cool. And it was always like reassuring. A good friend of ours, and now I'm like, say, in my 20s, 30. And this good friend of ours dies. He's Jewish. And he came after he died to me. And when I saw him, and we talked through our minds. And he says, hi. And I go, hi. I go, I love you so much. And when he hugged me, he like hugged through me. And I have never, ever felt that kind of love in my whole life, except like that. It was electrifying. And you talk through your mind, which is kind of strange. But it was true, and it's happened on different occasions with different people. But again, I didn't say much to anybody. Maybe to like my mom or my sister, but not too many, because my sister would also have these kinds of experiences. I don't think my mom did. But that's how this spirituality stuff all began. And I'm going to leave it at that for now and break this down into segments to tell you like some of the books that I read, some of my experiences, places I've gone, and things that I've done. Because I really think each one of our journeys in life, and especially our spiritual journey or our internal journey, they're so unique and they're so beautiful that I think it's worth sticking around. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, and I'll see you in another video where we can discuss more of this.